But I want to switch gears now and talk to a man who you've come to know not only through this show, but many shows. He was just in New Hampshire, which indicates perhaps that there's something in the wind, and that's a man by the name of Donald Trump now joins us on the Savage Nation. Donald, how are you?
Hello, Michael.
So, Donald, you were just in New Hampshire. You had an altercation with a slimy reporter, which I've been following with interest. He ate your food, and then he put you down in the media, that idiot. Are you going to run for the office, or you can't say yet?
It's very interesting. The politics and eggs, it's a thing that's been going on in New Hampshire since about 1990. And we broke every record up there. It was phenomenal. They had CNN, they had Fox, they had everybody. They had tremendous numbers of. And this slimeball, this guy from BuzzFeed, which is a pretty irrelevant thing, but he did a story. And I actually did him a favor because he's a friend of one of the people that worked for me, and I did him a favor. And they got out because that was during the big snowstorm. And he wrote this totally fictitious piece that was absolutely disgraceful, which tells you that if you're a conservative, these guys will lie, and what they'll do is unbelievable. A real sleazy guy.
I remember your plane couldn't land. Your plane couldn't land in LaGuardia because of the storm, so you were going to Florida, and so you offered him a ride, and you gave him all your hospitality that you give all your guests at your great Mar-a-Lago, and then he turned around and stabbed you in the back and invented stuff.
Really a disgusting guy. I mean, you look at him and you could see it. And I actually predicted it, in all fairness. I told my guy, I said, look, you can't get a fair shake from these guys. But BuzzFeed, I think it's called, is just sleaze. And this guy's a sleazeball. And I said, you'll never get a fair shake from him. He said, Mr. Trump, I guarantee. I said, all right, so here's the deal. If it's fair, and I devoted very little time. It makes it sound like you spent a lot of time. I devoted extremely little time to him. But I said, here's the deal. If it's fair, I'm telling you it won't be. But if it's fair, that's great. And if it's not fair, we'll fire you. Is that okay? He said, yes, that's fair. And he was very
the guy who worked for you, he quit, though. Didn't he, the guy who worked for you, quit after this?
Resignation because of what happened. And he was totally used. And the guy's story was fiction. It was disgusting. And
I heard he was ogling the waitresses at Mar-a-Lago.
He was having a good time, it sounds like to me. I don't
He was a happily married man who was ogling the waitresses.
Well, he was.
Donald, let's get serious here. Political ambitions. Are you going to run?
Please. I will certainly be looking at it. Right now, as you know better than anybody, we have an election coming up in 2014 that's so important and so vital. And I really think that if they play up Obamacare big league, they're going to end up winning, the Republicans. I really think they have some good candidates. They don't have to win so much. You're talking about 6 seats, and maybe they could even do 7 or 8, is from what I'm hearing. But I really think that they have a very good chance because of one simple thing. Well, really a number of things. Number one, we're a laughing stock all over the world. Number two, the economy stinks and jobs are, not in this country. They came out with a report 2 weeks ago, the worst in 37 years, which is inconceivable. So you have the jobs, you have the lack of respect for the country. But Obamacare is such a catastrophe because it's right in your face. And, there's no silicone there. There's no, you're not going to be able to get away with it. You're not going to be able
But Donald, as a businessman, I'm assuming you would cut taxes, you would shrink government. Would you rein in NSA spying? Would you cut out the spying on innocent people? That's a very big issue.
Well, I happen to feel, and this is a very interesting issue because when you look at Snowden, and I have friends that are very conservative, and they feel totally and very liberal. And frankly, everyone feels totally different. It doesn't matter. I have conservative friends that hate Snowden and consider him a traitor and a spy and everything else. And then I have others that are conservative that say that he did a service to the country because of what's happened. Okay.
Well, I'm in the latter camp. I know you actually called for his execution as a spy.
I'm in his camp. I think he's a disgusting human being. I think he's.
Well, we differ on that. But how would you restore the American military, which has been decimated under Obama?
Well, the first thing we have to do is make some money. This country is losing tremendous numbers of jobs. Our economy, and I've been talking to this about to you and others for 3, 4, 5 years now. What's happening in China? Look at China's economy; they're booming, and other countries, not just China. China's the number one abuser, but you look at what's happening with China and other countries; they're taking our jobs. And we don't have money. We have a workforce that's not working. We have a workforce where we have a phony, 6.7, 6.8 unemployment rate, but that's totally phony because when you stop looking for a job, they take you off as though you found a job. I mean, the real number is probably 21, 22%. It could even be higher than that. So we have a country that has massive deficits, owes $18 trillion very soon. $18 trillion, a number you didn't even hear about, Michael, years ago. I mean, 2-3 years ago, you never heard the word trillion. There was no such word, and now all of a sudden it's like commonplace. And
how does that, Donald, look, Donald, come on, you're a big business guy. You're in a league that most of us can't even understand. How does this ever get solved? How do we ever solve this debt?
You solve it through energy. You solve it through manufacturing jobs. You solve it from bringing jobs back into our country. I don't know if you know what's going on in Mexico, but Mexico is taking tremendous numbers of our jobs right now, beyond what anyone has any. I mean, it's going to be at a record-setting pace. So,
but why then are they flooding us with the poorest of the poor? Why are they flooding America with the poorest of the poor? But, Donald, are you still in favor, as you were a few years ago on my show? Remember, years ago I wrote a book called Trickle Down,
yes.
The Poverty Book, and I called for sanctions, to all Chinese goods should have a tariff on them. And you agreed with that. Would you still impose tariffs on Chinese goods?
Even more so, because it was bad 3 or 4 years ago. By the way, they charge tax on our cars. You know, when we send trucks over there, they impose a tariff. We don't know. Nobody knows this, but they impose a tariff when we're selling trucks. They don't want the trucks to be made here. They want the trucks to be made over there. They tariff us and they tax us, but we're not allowed to do anything for them. And then you have all these guys talking about free trade. I believe in fair trade. You know, the word
right.
trade is not the right word. It's
right.
fair trade. Well,
right.
They're taxing us, but we don't tax them. They're taking our jobs. They're manipulating their currency. And this isn't just China. This is others. But China is really doing a great job of it. There's never been any group or country that's done a better job of it, Michael. So, you know, you and I have been talking about this for a long time. So when you talk about the military, we need to make money in the country, and we need to do lots of good things. One of the things we have that we didn't even know we had 5 years ago is we have tremendous energy. Because of technology, we have tremendous energy under our feet, but we're not being allowed to get it. Now, North Dakota is doing a good job doing it privately, and, you know, it's a boom state. It's doing fantastically well. But we have tremendous energy right smack under our feet. We could become the energy capital of the world, and guess what? We're not doing it. So there are.
I know that if you were president, by executive order, you would approve the Keystone XL pipeline in one day, and Americans would benefit. The price of gas would go down. Right now, the Canadians are threatening to transport that oil by pipeline to Vancouver and ship it to China. What sense does that make for Obama to block it?
Well, you know, first of all, I would approve it. And second of all, you don't even need it because we have so much energy. We don't need Canada's energy either, as much as I love Canada. We don't need Canada's energy. I would still approve it because, you know what? It doesn't do anything negative to the environment, and it's a lot of jobs to build it. But we don't even need it because we have so much energy ourselves that you don't need pipelines to bring energy in from Canada. The country has such potential, but we're not using it, and that's why. And now you get back to the question of military. To have a great military, you also need money. You have to be able to afford it. Where you look at what's gone on in so many different places throughout the world, they don't respect us. Syria, Putin just ate our lunch in Syria. And I watched yesterday as President Obama started talking about what's going on in the Ukraine. And I say, oh, here we go again. And you can just imagine, because, you know, the Ukraine is their neighbor to Russia. You can just imagine what Putin is saying about Obama, you know, making these statements about.
Well, right, it's in his sphere of influence. It's not in our sphere of influence. I don't believe we have any business there, and I don't want to see World War III. But, Donald, you're a businessman, and you're well known as a businessman. You've threatened to run in the past and never did. Let me just say this. Who knows what you're going to do? It's up to you. I would encourage you to run. We don't have a candidate who I think can beat Hillary other than you. I'll go out on a limb and say it right now. Whoever the conservatives are thinking of putting up there may be good guys. They can't beat Hillary. You could. And I think you should run.
Well, we're looking at it very strongly, and we are watching 14 because obviously we have to get that done first. But I believe that the country is in unbelievable shape. And, you know, Hillary, who I know very well, but she certainly had a rough number of years as Secretary of State. I mean, what went well for us? Nothing. Nothing went well.
Nothing.
And
nothing. If she actually owns the Arab Spring, and that probably, as you well know, is the Arab Winter, which I defined it within a month of its beginning. But Donald, I think your strongest calling card is the economy, the economy, the economy. You're a businessman. America is a nation of business. And I think they would resonate with that simple message. But I want to ask you something, because I don't know where you stand on it. And you may disagree with me. I'm vehemently opposed to amnesty for illegal aliens for a whole slew of reasons. I believe in borders, language, and culture. Where do you stand on amnesty for illegals?
Well, pretty much what you just said. Look, you can't. When you have a country, you have to have a country. You have to have a wall. You can't let people in. And if people come in illegally, you can't just say, oh, it's fine. And by the way, if you're in Europe and if you're in other places throughout the world, various places in Asia, and you want to become a citizen of this country, it's virtually impossible.
That's right.
Impossible. And
Donald, I have a friend who just went to a small Caribbean nation on vacation. And she came back and she said the border agent said to her, or the customs agent, of course we have voter ID here. He said, how could you vote in the country if we don't know who you are? Yeah. We're the only Western nation that doesn't have voter ID. How in the world can that go on?
Well, that's one of the classics is voter ID, where they say that you're racist, you're horrible, you're a horrible human being if you want to see somebody's identification before they vote. I cannot believe they can get away with this stuff, but they certainly are doing an awfully good job of trying. And frankly, the Republicans have to get a lot tougher. They have to get a lot smarter, or they're not going to have a Republican Party. You're not going to have anybody that's going to vote Republican anymore.
Absolutely. It's a dead brand. I mean, when you've got them doing very little. People are calling Mr. Trump and asking, would you run as a Republican or as an independent if you decided to run?
If I decided to run, I'd run as a Republican. I am a Republican, but I'd run as a Republican because, frankly, the three-party system is very, very difficult. A lot of people...
I agree. I agree 100%. I told people you start a third party, you're guaranteeing a Democrat victory.
Number one, you guarantee that. Now, you could also say Ralph Nader didn't exactly help Mr. Gore get elected.
No.
Without Ralph.
No, I remember that fabulous Texas businessman who lifted up the hood that we all loved. Back in the Clinton years, Ross Perot, he made he gave the Democrats the election.
Without Ross Perot, you have Bush gets another term. I mean, the Bush Senior gets another term. Ross Perot was a disaster. Look, I like Ross Perot, but he certainly hurt the Republicans. There's no question about that.
Right. So I'm totally opposed to a third party concept because you can't win, but you can put a more conservative plank into the Republican Party, which is what I think you are suggesting here, correct?
Well, I think there's no question about it. And the Tea Party, which is just being scoffed at by everybody, these are great people. They love the country probably as much or more than anybody, and they are just being scoffed at and treated extremely unfairly. And I know so many people in the Tea Party. I've made many speeches in front of the Tea Party. These are people that want to see the country be great again. And it's amazing the abuse they have to take.
Donald, listen, right now, if you were to announce your candidacy, I think 98% of the people listening to my radio show would run out to the polls and buy whatever it is you're selling because you've hit 100 on my show today.
Well, that's very nice of you, and I love your show, and you're a special guy, and you love the country, and we all love the country. We want to see something good. A lot of people love the country that don't have necessarily the right ideas, and we're going to have to give them the right ideas because we're not going to have much of a country left if we keep going along this path.
Well, I'm an immigrant's son, and strangely enough, the show now is a dream that anyone would want. The Savage Nation is on in New York on the powerhouse ABC, as you probably know.
I do.
Chicago, Dallas, San Francisco, Washington, Detroit. And the show is doing so great because I'm putting everything into it. You, of all people, know what it's like to build a new business. You also know what it's like to open a new business and have it succeed from day one. And, Donald, this show is succeeding from day one in this new time slot. And I want to thank you very much for taking the time out to be with us today on the Savage Nation.
Well, I know for a fact you have a great show. But, by the way, your show, over the years, I've known how good it is and how good you are. And I love being on your show anytime, and you know that, Michael.
Donald Trump, please go for the gold. Thanks for being with us on the Savage Nation.